Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
This is our first joint meeting of the Board of County Commissioners and Board of Education in person in a long time. We are glad to be here. My name is Bettina Umstead. I'll be chairing this meeting Tuesday, May 10th, 2020 at 9 a.m. This meeting is now called to order. The first item on our agenda is the agenda review. And I'll accept the motion anytime to approve this agenda.
Move approval of the agenda.
A second.
The move by Mr. Sears, seconded by Ms. Lewis. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from February 15th, 2022.
So moved.
It's been moved by Chair Howerton, seconded by Vice Chair Lewis. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please use the same sign. Passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is Durham Public Schools update on capital projects. We have Lions Farm Elementary School and Northern High School, and that will come from DPS operations team. I'll pass it over to Dr. Julius Monk.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Umstead, and welcome to Board of County Commissioners and other board members and Dr. Mabanga. As we pull up the presentation, I'm going to ask Mr. Davis to come forward, and he's going to give us a brief update for Lions Farm and Northern High School, and at the end, we'll take questions. Mr. Davis.
Good morning. I'm Frederick Davis with Executive Director of Building Services, and today we're going to give you a short video that recaps the tremendous progress we've had on two projects that are in construction, Lions Farm Elementary and Northern High School. And then we'll take you to the next steps ongoing on those two projects, as well as give you an update on the potential CIP and bond projects. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, if you go back to the next slide, there's a link. You'll click on that link for me, please. And while that's being pulled up, I just want people to know that there was no stunt double in this presentation. All OSHA requirements were adhered to. And I do have my SAG card if anyone was wondering after the presentation. Okay, let's see. So what you will see in a moment once we work this out is just a recap of when we started. You were at the groundbreaking of Lions Farm, and we're on schedule and on budget to wrap that up in August of this year. And when you fast forward, Northern High School, we also had the groundbreaking this fall, and you will see tremendous work. Load-bearing walls are up, steel is in place. If you ever drive by that way, you would see massive grading and tremendous work from Barnhill Contracting and Ratio Architects. Tell you what we'll do. For the sake of time while we wait, we'll just go to the next slide. Is that okay, Ms. Smith? And I'll just give you a little update of where we are in the project, and then it'll probably make a little sense in the video recap. Oh, here we go. All right. I don't think we have any sound. Again, that's not a stunt double that you see. That is me. We did take this in one day, so there was no time lost in terms of work being done here at Durham Public Schools. We hear it, but it's coming. Yeah, while we wait, it's exciting time for DPS. We haven't built a new school in 10 years. And so this video is not an indication of what we can do here at DPS because we are moving the needle and making sure that our children have adequate. Welcome. I'm currently standing in what would be our, so that you get the whole effect. Thank you to our communications department for doing an excellent job. Mr. Cunningham, Ms. Cooper. And so without further ado, we're ready to showcase. All right. Hello, I'm Frederick Davis, Executive Director of Building Services for Durham Public Schools. Our department oversees the design and construction of all our facilities, the maintaining of our facilities, and the cleanliness of our schools. Today, we're going to give an update of one of our newest schools that is currently in construction, Northern High School. This 2,000 students facility will house our wonderful culinary arts department, as well as 21st century learning. So, if you're ready, let's grab our hard hats and take a look. Welcome. I'm currently standing in what would be our pre-function area. To my right will be our auditorium. Over here, you'll have students in the cafeteria area. To my left, you have an opportunity for a cafe hosted, produced, and managed by our own students in our wonderful culinary arts department. So here is our main gym. As you can see, load-bearing masonry is fully erect. Steel joist and metal decking is in the process of being complete to really dry in our building. Soon, we'll complete with finishes, paint, and new flooring to complete the gym so it can be ready for athletics, student and staff events, as well as serving our community. As you can see behind me, crews are working to start the beginning phases of grading. This area will house our softball and baseball field, as well as our tennis courts for student activities, as well as community events. In approximately a year and a half from now, I'm standing where it is the front door of Northern High School. A front door for success and a front door for opportunities for Durham Public School students. As you're aware, this summer, August of 2022, we'll be opening our brand new elementary school on Scott King Road, Lions Farm Elementary. Today, I'm going to give you an update on the tremendous progress and what we have to look forward to as we open in 2022 of August, Lions Farm Elementary. Come, let's take a tour. As you can see, we have a very open concept, conducive to bright, natural lighting. One of the concepts when we developed this design to make sure that we use natural elements. So as we continue to give you updates with floor finishes, you can see some of the ceiling tile is currently in place. As you can see, it mimics lily pads. We wanted to have a natural feeling and also utilize the built envelope in the building itself to be a learning tool. And so kids, as they walk through this common area to go to the cafeteria or the gym, they can look up or they can look on the floor and see natural elements like frog, lily pads, things of that nature. So we wanted to make sure that the school was a tool for learning as well. Let's go inside the Gymatorium. It's a combined event space that can be closed off for either separate events or large community and parent gatherings. As you see right now, we're getting ready to put in some flooring. As we see, a first coat of paint has been put on. We have acoustical tiles to deal with noise coefficient and our ratings. Here we have a stage for student performances. And again, as we said, a flexible space where we can use the operable wall to mainly just have gym. And then we also have the other side where we have seating for our cafeteria. This school will be able to serve 600 students when fully built out we can host about 800 people in this large gathering area. So we're really excited about the flexibility and able to seat as many people and from the community as possible. So this is a traditional classroom. As you can see, it's been outfitted with cubbies and sinks. We are getting ready. As you see, we've got pull down for where our electronics, AV, some of our interactive smart boards will be. So we're really excited about the classrooms and how we're going to upfit them for 21st century learning. I hope you enjoyed this update of Lions Farm and the tremendous progress that Davis Kane and Monteith Contracting has done for us. We hope to bring you more updates as we get closer to the opening of this school in August of 2022. Again, I'm Frederick Davis with Building Services, and thank you for this opportunity to provide you an update. Have a good day. Progress is ongoing and continuing. We'll pull up the other slides that provide you a little greater detail on those two projects, and then we'll take some questions. While we wait for the presentation to come up, are there any questions on what you saw in that video that I may be able to answer? It is lovely. Yes, ma'am.
Can we make sure we use the microphone so that folks that are streaming can hear us? Thanks, y'all.
I just had a comment that I think this is, as we look to ways to engage and inform the community, this is a really great concept of just doing these short videos. So
Yes, we plan on providing hopefully a monthly update, particularly for Lions Farm as we get ready to open that in August. So we do plan on doing some more iterations to provide you greater detail of the work going on.
yeah, I mean, especially something like this where people can't just go inside and walk around and be on the site, but there's just, I think it has great applications for all of us. So kudos to Durham Public Schools for this. Thank you.
Go to the third slide, please. All right, so as you saw in Northern, we're starting some grading on the ball fields and as well as the parking lots. Some of our main masonry load-bearing walls that take the longest to erect due to the nature of construction are complete. And so as you saw in the video, the auditorium and gymnasium are fully erect. We're doing piping, sanitary sewer, stormwater, as well as providing some roof deck. If you remember in the building, we have a video here, we won't share it today, that takes you through a panoramic view of that main corridor where I was standing in. It's kind of the connection spine that takes you to the common core elements and then the specialties such as the gym, arts, and theater. Next slide, please. So again, Lions Farm is scheduled to be complete in August. And right now we're doing, small site grading. The building is fully dried in. We will have permanent power and water towards the end of this month, which will allow us to finish the finishes that I talked about. At the bottom of the slide, you'll see the illustrations that have come to fruition in construction in terms of the lily pads, as well as the floor tile that provides a learning tool for the students who want to create a natural element as this space is placed in a heavily wooded natural feeling. So as you walk from the outside in, you continue that theme throughout the building. We did do a proposal and a price for newly installed solar panels that will happen towards the end of this fall. That would help generate and reduce our energy consumption on the grid by approximately 20%. So we're excited about adding that feature. As we move into our newly designed projects, we'll be able to incorporate that at an earlier stage. This is more of an appendage. However, we've worked with our designers on Lions Farm to make sure what we start out with, we can actually build towards and to really reduce our energy and carbon footprint. Next slide, please. So here's an update of the projects that are part of our CIP first priority list. Again, the newly named Murray Massenburg Elementary is slated to start construction hopefully this fall, as we will take in bids this summer. And then you see the 6 elementary schools that are slated to be approved by the Board of Education for design development to continue on with construction documents to have a short path following Murray Massenburg in terms of bidding documents. And then we've selected Brian Atkins and Perkins and Will to be the designer of record and design firm for the newly designed Durham School of Arts. We hope to be having a negotiated price for that work in June to bring to the board so they can begin starting on that project as well. Below you have some images of Murray Massenburg on the left and one of the 6 renovations, Holt Elementary School on the right. Next slide. With that, I'll take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Davis and your team for the presentation. We've done a lot of work to get some new schools online, and that's only possible because of the collaborative relationship that we've been able to have to get the funding we need to make sure we can move forward on these projects. And I know families are excited about both. I've met Lions Farm families who were excited about that new opening, as well as Northern families who are excited about that as well. I'll take questions either from board members or commissioners.
Okay. Good morning. Brenda Howerton, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. And since he's recording this, it might be good for each person to say their name so that it's recorded. This is about Northern and the community out there. Can you say a little bit about what's happening with the community? I know there was some concern about the community, within the community out at Northern. So can you talk a little bit about what's happening there?
Yes, we're in constant communication by providing updates on the schedules through our contractors on when we may provide some disturbance such as heavy, loud equipment. We've also been in contact with several homeowners associations. I think we have a meeting at the end of this month to go over the schedule and to keep them abreast of what's going on. Now, there has been some lack of information provided, but we have curtailed that and been able to keep them abreast and transparency, I think, which was one of the biggest things that we failed to do previously before we initially started this project. We know that we can't make up lost time, but we hope that the presence that we're showing provides them a little comfortability as we build a school for the students and staff of Durham.
You're doing such a great job with the buildings, and I just had heard from Old Farm is the community we're talking about, and just whatever we can do so that the community doesn't feel that they are being disrupted would be.
Big Chip Shuttlesworth.
Yes, we do have a meeting scheduled with the Old Farm Neighborhood Association for Thursday, May 26th. So we are continuing those conversations.
Vice Chair Jacobs.
I have a question, but just thinking about the community and how school facilities are used. I'm wondering, will the track and some of the facilities be open to the community to walk on, like before school and on the weekends and things like that at night?
Historically, yes, the schools are part of the community. We have a great facilitron system that will allow you to rent the facility, the auditorium and the gym, but those track areas historically have been open for those who want to get their walk on in the morning.
Okay, I think that's important. You know, a lot of people like to walk, and that's a safe place for people to do that together. So I think that would be a good thing to make sure the community knows about as well. Some of the benefits of having a school next door. So my question is about, I know there were some concerns about, just access to both schools, pedestrian access, walkability. Just wondering where we're at with those issues, crosswalks and sidewalks. And I know Northern is, of course, you've got, that's Roxborough right there. And there's still people who could walk to Northern if they can safely get there. And then with Lions Farm, I know we've heard a lot about, there's lots and lots of subdivisions there where kids could also walk to school, but I know we've been dealing with issues. So just wanted to get an update on that. Thank you.
Yes, so what you're describing is our off-site road improvements based on the county and state mandates. Particularly for Northern, we actually just had the bids for those dollars, which was roughly around 2.5 million. We're in constant communications. Executive Director of Transportation, Mr. Matthew Palmer, has been speaking with the state and local officials on how we can provide additional traffic signals and calming measures, particularly at Northern High School. In regards to Lions Farm, we've made those off-site improvements. We are looking at the additional requests from the community to provide additional crosswalks to mitigate some of those heavy traffic areas during off and non-peak hours for schools. So we have started the process and we'll be coming back to our board to let them know the cost implications of that very soon.
Okay, well, keep us posted because these issues are always cross jurisdictions and are complicated, and any way that we can help with that. We do have a great, I don't know if she's here, great transportation planner, Ellen Beckman. Some of you may know. She, if she can help with facilitating anything, just let us know.
Ms. Byer.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Commissioner Jacobs. That's a shared value for both of these boards. I wonder if there's one of you all that really has ownership or sits in transit kind of spaces that could be a liaison. I know that our staff have really hit some brick walls on some of these conversations, especially with NCDOT. And I'm not always aware of which committees you all are on. If we can get some clarification on that, that would be helpful.
Forgetting to do that. NCDOT, I'm on the transit board, but NCDOT, the city, is a representative at the city. Don't have anyone at the county, but we could have Ellen Beckman get in touch with that person for you.
And I serve on our Durham, Chapel Hill, Carborough Metropolitan Planning Organization that also.
And as a reminder to both boards, the offsite improvements were not a part of the original project budget. And I believe it was in either the fall of 2021 or 2022, when the boards met, there was a commitment that once we got those bids in for the offsite improvements, that we would bring that back to the county to adjust those budgets. So just a reminder that they were not a part of the original budget.
That, are you saying that for sidewalk?
All the offsite improvements, correct.
I would just like to add, though, it would be good to have the city as a part of this conversation as well, since some of these improvements may be actually the responsibility of the city.
Well, I think what's moving forward, what the mayor is looking at is for the school board, the county and the city to have a conversation so that we are doing these things collaboratively rather than saying the city's supposed to do this, county, like pointing fingers. So she is looking at sitting down, having a conversation so that we're doing these things collaborative manner.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we have to work collaboratively in order for things to get done. And if we all are pushing on NCDOT, we'll probably see more traction. So I hope we can have that meeting pretty soon as these projects are moving along so we can have that in order. I'm gonna go Ms. Valladares and then Commissioner Burns.
I'll just add a quick comment. I think the offsite discussion should be, yeah, definitely standalone just because there are other schools. Every morning I look at kids going through Cook Road, trying to get to Hillside. There's no sidewalk and they're dangerously right there where the cars are passing on both ends. It's a very narrow street. So I think the offsite just needs to be all our schools. We need to assess what are the danger zones because every school should have access. And Hillside is one of those schools that I've been looking at for a while. So thank you so much.
Great minds think alike. We can't have that discussion in a vacuum. That was all I was gonna say about the new schools. When we have other schools that you and I both look at every day and we're like, how in the world do they do it? And even some with sidewalks. Jordan, there's sidewalks at Jordan, but that's a crazy intersection. I've had kids walk right in front of my car in front of Jordan, and I just because I'm paying attention, that was the game changer. So I agree. That was my first thing. My second comment was one, thank you to Mr. Davis. Thank you to staff. And along that same conversation about sidewalks and about pedestrian walkways, I know you all got significant inquiries about the tobacco trail. We got them. I think people sent them to me on Facebook. They stopped me at church. And so for everybody here who, at least when I forwarded those questions, you all followed up, I really seriously appreciate it. Parents are quite industrious. I wanted to follow up with all this construction that is going on. With all the new renovations, I want to follow up on a request that Commissioner Jacobs had a little while ago about, and we don't have to do this here, but about what we have in inventory or what we have in our land portfolio. As you all know, RTP and Durham and Rouge, everything is getting more and more condensed. And as we're in the county are looking at our portfolio and how we can be creative to support this community, right now, there's land at Northern, there's land at Lowe's Grove, so it would be great if we could find out what you all have, what we have, so that we can make significant investments in our community as we move forward, because as you all know, land is very scarce. And I know that was a request we had last time. I just want to lift that request back up again. I know that you all have some things going on some of those parcels, but a lot of things have been elevated in the public, and then we don't see a lot of traction about land usage. And I will stop right there for the sake of not offending some people in this room, but I would really like to know what the land portfolio looks like in some of the usage. And I'll end there.
Let me just say one other thing about transportation, about sidewalks. And after the mayor and I toured Route 9, there's a lot going on with sidewalks and bus stops and all of that. And I'm in constant conversation with a county manager, with Go Triangle. So there's going to be, and the county is in the process of doing a Durham transit plan. So there's a lot going on around this so that things are not done in isolation. So we really need to make sure that the county gets their work plan in place, and that Go Triangle is working inconsistent with what it is that Durham wants. And we are having some serious conversations. So it's not gone unnoticed. I think we need to give the staff a chance to get their work plan in place.
Wanted to quickly respond to Commissioner Burns' request. Definitely, this is something that's within a few days, we'll be able to send it to all county commissioners, our portfolios when it comes to lands, and what our intent as well about using those lands. So that's within a few days, we'll be able to submit that to you.
And I think as we're working on those transit plans, I really want DPS to be a part of those conversations because we know it's all together. And I think in the past, we were kind of added at the end and we were like, well, we had some needs that could have been met. So I just really want us to all three bodies be having those conversations, because our team has been looking at schools and how do we make sure we do renovations to increase accessibility for families, right? Whether that's sidewalks and all that. So I just hope we all three are having that conversation together. So please invite us and our team to any of those conversations. Ms. Byer?
Yeah, I was wondering if you might take the opportunity to talk about, we do have a new staff member that is transit focused. And I can't, her name is failing me, Kristen, is that?
Kristen Brookshire.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we have a new transportation planner who is joining us from the University of North Carolina, where she spent many years studying transportation and logistics. And she has been making contact with different city and county staff to open up that dialogue and discussion. As you may recall, our board entered in with Bike Durham and some other entities that are promoting different ways of mobility and transit to reduce some of the congestion that we're seeing on our streets. But a lot of it does depend on the infrastructure as it relates to sidewalks and roads and crosswalks and things like that. And so we're very excited to have Ms. Berkshire. She's a brilliant mind in transportation planning, and we look forward to the cooperation with all three bodies.
Commissioner Jacobs?
Yes, thank you. And that is so, I had heard that you all had hired someone. That's fantastic. And hopefully she and Ellen Beckman have gotten together. I wanted to circle back to what Commissioner Burns said. I had actually jotted down on my notes, joint land use plan, question mark. I think that talking about collaboration, I would hope that we will consider a city county DPS assessment of the lands that the publicly owned and controlled land that we have when we look at the issue of affordable housing. And I know that, we're still trying to figure out how we can do affordable housing for teachers and as an incentive, but, there've been especially a lot of really great recent articles in the paper around this issue and how we have, corporations coming in and taking control of our housing stock in Durham. It's a national trend. I was actually just visiting my daughter in Little Rock, Arkansas, where she lives in a wonderful apartment community. And I really got a firsthand glimpse because she has made friends with all these neighbors, and somebody has just bought her apartment complex. And now people who are on fixed incomes, who've been living there for 10, 20 years, people that she's become friends with, there are a number of people that are going to be forced to move because the landlord has, when people are renewing their contracts, the rent is being increased $200, $300, $400, and it's a company from California. So I just say that because I just got a real glimpse personally. I'm not a renter, but seeing through the eyes of my daughter and the people that she's become her family in Little Rock, how it's so destructive. So, one of the solutions is having control of the housing. If it's on public if it's public land and it is affordable housing that is built by the city, the county, the schools, then we can secure that as, affordable housing in perpetuity. So I think this is a really time-sensitive issue that we all are going to have to look at together, every single publicly owned piece of land. So I don't know if it's something that when we talk about in our budget, a way to fund that, but I just wanted to throw that out there. I think would be the first step for us all to do together.
Mr. Raven?
I'm glad that Frederick Raven, school board, I'm glad that we're all really talking about collaboration because there's some infrastructure funds that are available that we could actually apply for. I'm hearing a lot of talk about things moving further north up to the Rougemont area. I know that there's federal grants that we could apply for that address kind of like that middle mile when we're looking at our infrastructure. But I really also like to kind of look ahead, maybe about a year or two, when our ESSER funds start to kind of fade out and we are still making some MiFis available to some of our students. And there are federal funds to really kind of address that digital equity gap and making sure that we could actually start using this to kind of curtail that, maybe help some of our families actually know that there's a lot of these federal benefits that they're actually able to get. I want to say that the emergency broadband bill probably still has funds in it that's allowing families to get their internet access subsidized. So I would really like to see if there's any, appetite for us to also work together on that as well.
Commissioner Burns.
I'm so happy that you brought that up, Board Member Raven. I do want to follow. White House did do their press conference yesterday, and it is $30, like the internet connectivity. And I remember last year during our board meeting, we actually shared it. Our clerk shared it. And I think it was myself, maybe Commissioner Lum, we were clicking through, pretty sure Chair Houghton's like, wow, they on their computers, but it took 7 clicks on that website to get to the application. So then we made sure on our website, like, this is exactly where it is. So they have expanded that. GM Hager is behind us, and we do currently still have our RFP open, if I'm correct, for the Great Grant. So we are looking at ways that we can fund our middle mile initiatives and our last mile initiatives. And that is where we work with internet service providers to the Great Grant has about $350 in it, and the state's applying for it. So if you all are thinking about other grant opportunities that we can, share on our website that we can work with, I know that in our current budget, I'm looking back from my other manager, we are pulling in a grants and development specialist. So any collaborative work that we can do to help the community, I just want you, this board is all for it. There you go. Hey, so she's, I still saw it come behind me, but yes, how you doing, Dr. Sowell? Everyone, Dr. Sowell. But those are the two that we have been sharing, and we'd be more than happy to share some things from the infrastructure project as well. All right, we opened our grant, yes.
I'll give a quick update. This is Claudia Hager, General Manager, Durham County Government. We were so excited about a month ago when we released the RFP for broadband, and that has been the work for years. We tried about 4 years ago to get an engineering firm to help do some mapping so we can see, well, where are the gaps? No one was interested because they sort of knew it would be probably cost prohibitive, because at that time, the feds didn't have dollars, the state didn't have dollars. But we were willing, because our board had a commitment to finance it if necessary, because we saw broadband as a part of economic prosperity, educational attainment, et cetera. So long story short, we were so excited. We did the RFP. Right now, internet service providers are making application. They've made their application to the state for the Great Grant, and I can't remember the acronym at the moment. There will be another wave of grants, and Drew can help me since I can't remember. There will be another wave from the state as well. In our budget, we've set aside in our ARP dollars about $10 million to support broadband digital equity type initiatives. But we're also being tactical in leveraging the federal dollars first. And so that's why we took our time. Some other jurisdictions sort of went ahead and they're spending more of their ARP dollars versus this approach. If you had already picked a vendor, you would not be eligible for the Great Grant if you had already picked an ISP provider. But this is unfolding as it goes along. We're learning and we're working together. And so we definitely see the opportunities of collaboration and sharing information. And we will keep looking at Drew, because it's a team of us that are working on it. And we will start sharing even more information. One thing that we could get your help with is a communication to families to click on the survey to help share what your internet access looks like. The state has a survey right now. And if you click on the button, especially if you do it from the house, they will gauge the speed of that internet from where you are. So that gives them a live picture of what it is. We will do a push soon to make sure that folks fill out that survey. We're most interested in individuals that live in the northern part of the community, because that's where we have a lot of our gaps. Although some folks will say in the city with certain providers at times, they have gaps too. But that is an area of focus with our RFP. So I hope that's helpful, and we will share additional information. Thanks.
I'd just like to add, years ago, Deborah, Craig Ray, and I were in DC, and we met with Tillis, and he talked our ears off about broadband. I'll give you an hour conversation. Talk to us for an hour about his commitment to broadband. So this is not something that I think the state supports, really supports making happen. So we need to take advantage of it before November, as much of it as we can.
Yes, Commissioner
I
Jacobs.
just have a quick thought. Claudia, you mentioned how we really need to get people to fill out the survey, and we're really targeting Northern Durham. I'm just wondering, is there a way for us to partner with the schools that are in Northern Durham, like Mangum, Little River, Northern High School, to just send it out to those schools, or through the announcements for those schools, anything like that?
Absolutely. I know that our communications team will be ready to help promote that survey to those families. And I think we might need some instructions from you all on how to make sure we do it.
So what
well.
we are planning, we are developing a marketing strategy, because it will be a electronic game. It will be a old-fashioned mailing game, as well as knock on the door game, because we need as many people to tell us where they are with it. Some folks may be less responsive with an email. Some may take the mailing and not necessarily look at it. And we would like to leverage partners throughout the community, public sector, private sector. We had a conversation about broadband in the northern community. So we have a lot of partners there from our engagement there. So long story short, we will get you the information, and some would, if it's inserts that happen, that would be great. But we see the whole county as our audience, because some people may, work here, but may live in Northern Durham, so et cetera. So,
Thank you all so much for that presentation. We'll move to our next agenda item. That's an update on the Durham County budget. Dr. Soul, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you all so much for the opportunity to join this morning, and excited to meet those whom I haven't met before. So for the record, I will say my name is Kimberly Sowell, County Manager for Durham County. And last night had the opportunity to share my first recommended budget to our Board of Commissioners. And in sharing that, I shared the recommendation of increasing funding to DPS by 9.88 million, almost $10 million, for a total funding amount of $176 million. And our board, I've heard loud and clear from our board that education is a priority. And so we want to remain strong partners with Durham Public Schools, looked at increasing the funding amount kind of in correlation with the increase of our general fund budget. So our general fund budget increased by 8.97%. And so we've increased the per pupil funding to DPS by that same amount. And so I'll ask Keith Lane is here, if he will come up and share a little more in detail about the funding proposals and that we have recommended to our board. But we are really happy to be able to provide the funding levels to keep our salaries at a competitive level. We know that our teachers need to be adequately compensated, and we want to be leaders in compensation for our teachers, our certified and non-certified staff as well. And so we're partners with you in that effort. And so I'll ask Keith. Or Claudia? Claudia's gonna start, they're gonna tag team.
We're going to.
All right, so Claudia's
We have
gonna
so much.
come to
This
lead
is
off
hot off
first.
the presses. Okay. Yeah.
It's coming.
Okay, sure, no problem.
It's coming.
We will have very high level overview of the budget. And Keith and I will tag team, and you can go to the next slide, please. Real quickly, we'll give a framework on the budget development. Some expenditure and revenue highlights the Durham Public Schools allocation, and we'll have some discussion. Next slide, please. In the fall, we started our budget process with some outlook. We're always looking to see what the trends and patterns are. When we started in the fall, we started hearing, we need dollars for, of course, the impending bond referendum. So that was up there. We needed dollars for to support inflation. Inflation's been increasing at some of the highest levels that we've seen in decades, and lots of other priority areas. When the requested budgets came in, they came in almost $56 million more than the base budget from the prior year. The revenues, however, came in at 30.2 million. And so there was a gap. There's always some kind of gap. They have all these versus, contests right now, but so it's that revenue versus expenditure. So the gap is there. And so our challenge as budget policymakers is to always figure out, well, what are the tactical places we need to plan for? What's on the horizon? Because you always have to look at what's coming downstream. And planning for unexpected components as well. Next slide. Okay, this is not meant for you to read, but an example of the 5-year outlet. That look is in the budget document, and we'll make sure you have a link to all of that information. But as a part of the bond rating process, a requirement occurs to look at your 5-year expenditures as well as your 5-year revenue outlet, because they want to make sure as you plan that you are looking on the horizon. And so the main issue with that is if there are significant or material gaps that are on the horizon, they want to make sure you're planning for it. And in this community, we always try. Next slide, please. I'll give a few examples what we know are on the horizon and some things that we don't yet. We've seen lots of conversations, even this morning, talking about the dollars that are in the coffers right now because of the infrastructure investments that the feds have done. Those have resulted in a trickling down of resources to local communities across the nation. In Durham County and Durham City and in the community, Durham DPS, there's been over $260 million that have flowed to us and that will be with us until 2024. Of course, we have until 2026 to expend them, but that's a cliff, okay? It's what happens in 25 and 26. And as we talked about conversations, we've tried to, I know the city and the county and Durham Public Schools, there have been places that the city may have invested dollars that supported schools or supported the county, vice versa, the county, et cetera. So as we look at the community impact of these dollars, the question that stays in the forefront, I'm sure of you as the community is, what happens when it goes away? Are we prepared? And what tactically will we do when that transition comes? We know there's a potential 2.5 cent tax increase in 22-23 based on a bond referendum that's proposed in November. And you'll see on the slide the impact of those increases and the dollars support our public schools, the Durham Technical Community College and the Museum of Life and Science. Because I came up here without my glasses, I can't see what the impact is. But on a $200,000 house, I'm sorry, let me look over here. It is $50. Thank you very much, because I can't see that small one over there. It's a $50 impact. So, when you break that up monthly, that's a small investment when we're talking about infrastructure investments for our children. Next slide, please. But with that number, we have that in the forefront as we looked at the operating budget for this year. Inflation rate increases, we'll not dwell on that. I know that's in the forefront of many of us. You can't go to the gas station without reflecting on what it was last year. So inflation, or buy bread, or whatever the case may be. And so we have seen that impact in budget requests, construction cost requests. It impacts everything. It also, the feds are looking at, well, how do they slow it down, which means raising increases to the rates for borrowing, which has an impact potentially when we borrow money for bonds. So those are all the kinds of nuances that we think about and we plan for, especially when there are some realities right around the corner. The conversations have occurred about potential recessions, link there for an article, but then also the continued growth in our county and region. Durham County grew nearly or over 20% since 2010. And it's expected to grow over 40% over the next 30 years. So although we look at the 5-year outlook, just like you do, we look at the 10 as we plan for our capital planning and other infrastructure investments. Next slide, please. All right, I'm going to transition now to Keith, but I just wanted to give you some of the backstory. There's lots more behind that as to how we started our process. Keith will now talk about where we are.
Thank you, Claudia. Good morning to both boards. Always nice to speak with you. Quite soon after a budget recommendation from the manager, hopefully you all spied in on last night. Some general priorities of the county's 22-23 budget. As always, one of the top priorities is a sound fiscal standing, maintaining that sound fiscal standing. We'd like to always do more than we have available dollars to do. There's always the option to raise property taxes. That's a dual-edged sword. It brings in additional revenue, but it puts additional pressure, living pressure, on the very same people you're trying to help. We always need to try to focus on providing operational increases where necessary based on inflation, just to allow EMS to operate with higher gasoline prices, public safety issues, all of those things. We always are focused on trying to increase and meet the request for funding from Durham Public Schools. We always have to pay attention to our human capital needs, hiring positions. There were well over 100 positions requested across multiple departments as part of this budget. A total of 36, a little over 36 positions are recommended for funding. We are especially looking forward to supporting additional maternal health benefits, and I don't think we're done in that area. Commissioner Burns can speak quite eloquently to some needs around the African-American community and maternal health support. And then lastly, we have applied about close to $5 million, $6.5 million of ARPA dollars as part of our general fund budget to support certain things that are one-time issues. That's great. Using ARPA dollars is intelligent to use those dollars that are eventually going away for one time, but we are also supporting some ongoing issues that we recognize we're going to have to pick up the bill for in future years. Next slide, please. Some manager's budget priorities were the manager specifically wanted to come into this budget and try to create a recommended budget with no tax rate increase. We have done that, or at least that's what's being recommended. She really wanted to support our employees in a high inflation environment, in a very fluid work environment, in a high vacancy environment. And we have done that with a COLA support for our employees, plus a merit pay increase for employees, and some other special increases around EMS and sheriff's office, law enforcement officers and detention officers. We also, again, we had position growth to support emerging county needs, 36.7 new general fund ones. We're always trying to keep up and replace vehicles, particularly EMS and sheriff vehicles make up the vast majority of our fleet, and we want to keep those in top condition. And so we replace them if they're 10 years old or they meet a mileage number. We are needing to support and always want to support our employee health benefits. That's a vital part of the total compensation package. The increase this year alone for our health benefits was $4.4 million. And then we have used fund balance. Our fund balance has grown because of an exceptional couple of years of revenue collection, and we are applying more fund balance to balance the budget and expand services. Next slide, please. Any questions before I move on? Yes, ma'am. Spire.
Since you brought it up, Mr. Lane, you said your fund balance has grown to an exceptional level. Can you kind of state what that level is? I had
Well,
heard
it's
that you
at
all.
6, it's a little bit over our policy, board policy. I think it's our unallocated, which is just sort of, it's not allocated for any specific issue, is around 16%, and that grew a couple of percentage points. I don't have the actual dollar amount in front of me. We can get that explained through our finance department. But the point is that we recognize that, and we have increased our fund balance appropriation by $3, $4, $5 million this coming year, and we're using those dollars to support many of the needs across the general fund. Yes, ma'am.
It's also important to note with the fund balance growth, because revenues are higher than expected, it helps us so that we will not have to borrow as much with upcoming bond referendum. I mean, if we look at what a penny generated 5 years ago, when we did the 2016 bond, I think it was what, about $3.8 million. Now it's almost $5 million. But at that time, we said that we would increase property taxes to support the liquidation of that debt. So that penny is dedicated for that. So although we projected some growth, is growing higher than that. So it's good to have that context. So 3 years ago, 2016, we did a bond referendum of close to, it was $180 million. And we asked for a 2.5 cents tax increase. We started with 3.5, ended with a 2.5 cents. This time at over 500 and nearly 60 million, we're asking for potentially a 2.5 cents. The reason it is because we're been tactical in saving our reserves, and that's important to connect. But we just wanted to put that out there.
Yes, to that end, in our capital financing plan, we're spending 50, 60, 70 million dollars of fund balance over the next 10 years to limit the growth in property tax rate increases needed to support Geo Bond referendums coming up in 2022. We also have one that we're planning, at least financially, in 2026, again, to really focus on education. But we're talking about the 22-23 annual budget. Yes, ma'am, Commissioner Jacobs.
Keith, I think that's a really good point, because originally our staff came to us and said, if we do this bond, we will have like a 3.5 cent tax increase. And some people were a little concerned about that. So, but I think the point is that we're going to finance all of all the capital improvements, which include the schools, through pay-go, limited obligation bonds, and Geo bonds. And, our staff has a whole strategy around over the next 10 years how to pay for all of the construction. But I just wanted to add that to what you were saying.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Jacob is looking at me because all I could see was 10 cents on the dollar, because we were talking about 3.5 cents for the bond, and then looking at maybe raising another 2.5 cents for the general fund, and then the city raising 3 cents, and all I could see was 10 cents, and I knew the citizens would be ready to hit us all upside the head. So yeah, I was screaming a little bit, and that was just more than I've seen in 14 years that I've been on the board. It was like, we can't do that to folks that are really having a difficult time right now, even buying food. Don't even mention gas. So just going to the grocery store right now is difficult for folks. And then if we put an extra burden on them with that. So I'm just so appreciative that the staff was able to bring that down to at least 2.
Yeah, that's super important. I just, that you're being strategic. When folks say that you've added $20 million to fund balance this year, that's true. You've said that publicly. When they say fund balance in the county is over $200 million, is that the scope that we're talking about in the piggy bank of unassigned fund balance?
That's not unassigned fund balance alone. That's a much smaller number
Yeah,
of the
but
200 million total fund balance.
that's fine. I'm asking for clarification because
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
what folks are saying in the community.
Yes, ma'am.
I want y'all to be able to clarify that. And it's important to hear that it is part of your longer term strategy. But it's also, I think this budget is a great starting place for our shared values of our boards. And I loved and cheered last night how well y'all are caring for your employees because you know how important that is. My concern, and we'll get to it at the end, is that you've been generous with us, but it lets us take care of our operational needs and not our people. And so those are tough things that our board's going to wrestle with and hopefully wrestle jointly because these are shared values. But thank you.
So for the general fund outlook, there are some major revenue sources that we key on each year in the budget office and from the management side to say will indicate how much available new growth and revenue we'll have for expanded services or new services in any given year. And the key natural growth revenues we had, again, for 22-23 is significant growth from this current year. And that significant growth, remember, is an estimate. We haven't even started 22-23. That's a month and a half away. And then it goes for 12 months. So all the revenue numbers we're dealing are kind of like monopoly numbers. We're guessing at it based off of trending this year. And this year's revenue collection so far has been very good. With that in mind, we're looking at $32 million in additional funding from these key revenue sources. Property tax for the general fund at close to 14 million, sales tax at 6.8 million. Sales tax is a real true indicator of how good the local economy is doing, and it's doing very well, which has its own positives and negatives, as we all know. Medicaid hold harmless is a form of funding that we get back from the state now because we lost Article 44 sales tax. A number of years ago, they took over paying for Medicaid costs. We just are now collecting more in Article 44 than Medicaid costs. The state gives us that money back. That's a significant increase, 5 million. Register of deed fees are up. There's a lot of real estate activity going on. So register of deed fees have increased and EMS fees are increasing significantly. It's actually more than that 1.7 million. That number needs to be updated, but that's largely because we have a significant fee increase proposed, recommended in the manager's recommended budget to get in line with our peers, local peers. Any questions? Yes, sir.
I just have a quick question about how you're going to actually report on these revenues once you get the bonds and you invest in the sustainability and the solar structure. I know there's been some mention about there's going to be revenue that will kind of offset your expenses. So I'm wondering, how are you all going to be factoring that type of revenue growth? Or are you all going to be calculating the savings that you all are going to be getting from utilizing solar energy?
It'll probably more be the second one. A savings will be something I'll have to wait to see, a net savings. What generally happens is you have slower growth in expenditures. You don't have a net savings, you just pay out less more. Instead of 5% energy cost increases a year, you may only be at 1%. So is that a savings? Not necessarily, it's just a savings and growth. When we institute those, hopefully we will have enough technology in place that we can track energy savings across our buildings. I don't know that it's going to be significant amount, but each of us maybe have a different number in mind of what significant means. I'm looking at multiple millions of dollars that I need.
Yeah, so
to do anything.
and that's what I was kind of wondering about when you all do your projections, and you're looking at, I guess you're kind of looking at making sure that you're actually getting ahead of the inflation, right? So you can actually stabilize the future costs. But I'm wondering if the goal is it 2030 to be at 80% and 2050 to be at 100% basically off the grid and not having to use, not creating that carbon footprint. I'm just wondering how our projections are going to be looking, because I know a lot of people from the community, when they're emailing us to advocate for supporting that bond and having that one bucket just for the solar energy, they're trying to sell us on the fact that it's going to be a huge savings. And I just want to make sure that we're cognizant of how we also communicate that out to people, because I know that's going to be a big push when that bond does come up. So thank you.
If I can just make one comment to that, I think it's going to be incumbent on both of our organizations to establish a true baseline that we can measure whether it is savings or slow growth in the cost, the expenses. So that's going to be the critical point for us to make sure we have a true baseline for where we start measuring the reductions in, the cost of energy.
As part of the recommended budget, we have recommended a new position that will be an energy sort of project manager that will oversee up to the $40 million worth of investments that the county has over the 10 years. I think it's going to take a couple of months before we establish that baseline and a framework from which we can compare. I just can't tell you at this moment what we built into estimates. Consultants built in some numbers, but it was still a net increase in spending for us, but transferring to more renewable energy type costs and ultimately outcomes from that.
Does that position support just county facilities or school and county facilities in your dream?
So we initially were looking to help the county, but it will actually kind of translate over into helping the school systems as well. That's a conversation we've had, not just about sustainability, but also in our MWBE efforts. We want to, work on this and develop a strategic plan collaboratively to make sure we're in lockstep.
I do want to make sure that we're able to finish the budget presentation. So these are really rich conversations, but I want to make sure we're able to get all the way through that in our allotted time, because this also as a whole is really important for our work. So
We'll go real fast, but it's important to note, we also did a study, which is real important, and it had targets, and I don't have those with me. You never know what questions may come up, but we'll make sure that we get that to you, because there are targets that are there so that we can work towards. And I think that's as Dr. Sowell said, having that baseline information. We, in some of our conversations, talked about the schools doing a study as well. And I believe Mr. Davis, when he talked with us, there were conversations about a more comprehensive look as well.
Is this about the budget, Ms. Valladares?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we get through this presentation. So that's all.
Of
Go
course,
ahead.
yes. So this budget presentation that you have, I'm so grateful that you have the property tax, sales tax, fees, and everything else. It's very clear. What I would love is to have a little conversation about all bodies of government regarding forfeitures or anything that we get in terms of revenue, or where that conversation fits, whether it's forfeitures or I know for city and county, there's that conversation about what goes where. Anything that is probably not listed on here that could be another point of conversation for the budget.
By themselves are largely dictated, the state dictates us what they can use for. The only forfeiture number that comes to my mind of any significance, and it's not large, it goes to the sheriff's office, and we don't have control of those dollars. I know that there's not a significant delta, and what I mean by that, what I care about is the change, like a growth in a number of $5 million for medical hold harmless. And I know our forfeiture revenues, whatever they are, weren't significant, maybe tens of thousands of dollars increases. Not, again, significance a relative term. When I'm working with $550 million, I get a little skewed in what I call a significant increase in revenue. So please don't be offended or let me know. $10,000 is significant, but my point being is that our forfeiture revenue source has not grown significantly. Is that answering your question?
It does answer my question. Thank you.
These are the key ones that really give us operating room to consider DPS increases, to consider COLA, and that's why I'm focusing on these. Yes, we had some increases in other revenues. They're smaller amounts, $10,000 here, $100,000 there. Sometimes those revenue sources are dedicated to services provided in public health or different departments. So it's a mixture of things. But I would be happy to sit with you at some point and sort of walk through our revenues, or the whole school board, and sort of talk about them in more detail. I do want to get to the.
Yes, we're going to get there. Mr. Lasore has one comment, and then we're going to go right back to this presentation because we're still at the beginning. And so we want to make sure we get all the way through it. Mr. Lasore.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. Fines and forfeitures, we do receive fines and forfeitures from the county in regards to what they may collect from jail bonds, so on and so forth, and other fines and forfeitures that come along. It's not quite $1.5 million annually. We also get the fines for late filing fees for taxes and things of that nature. But it's just a little less than 1.5, and of course it dropped during COVID. So we expect it to come back to the 1.5 level.
And that goes directly to DPS. That is not a budgeted number that I get to choose. It's going to be this amount and you get it. It's whatever is collected and goes directly to DPS. So I don't really consider that a revenue source for us to then choose to spend on things. Capital financing budget. This is important because at board policy, for as long as I've been working for Durham County, has dedicated property tax revenue to go to support our capital financing plan, and 2 articles of sales tax, Article 40 and Article 42 sales tax. The entire amount the county collects is dedicated, collected, and moved to this capital financing plan fund. And then occupancy tax is fully goes to our capital financing plan fund, or almost all of it. Those 3 revenue sources largely drive our payment on annual debt service. Our annual debt service payments are in the $60 to $70 million range. It's on our budget document page. I just have a whole lot of numbers in my head. I don't know that number, but I know it's in the $60 to $70 million. Annually we pay. When I say debt service, this is kind of like all the houses we own, all the things we have to pay mortgage payments on add up to $60 or $70 million a year. By board policy, we collect a certain amount of property tax revenue. We dedicate sales tax revenue, occupancy tax revenue, and a few others to pay that annual payment. And that's where we talk about fund balance. Using over the next 10 years, also, we take money out of our savings account along with these revenue sources to try to pay for what's going to hopefully be an approved $550 million general bond referendum. Next slide, please. And I'm not going to ask you if you have any questions until we get to the end.
Thank you.
So we had $32 million of new general fund revenue. What I want to point out is these 6 priorities took up 30 of $32 million in new revenue. The point of showing that is that's only 6 priorities. The money seems massive, and it is, but the requests and needs are massive as well. Employee compensation increases across COLA, merit, special increases for EMS and the sheriff, that totals $11.88 million. Additional funding recommended for DPS right at $10 million at $9.88 million. Employee health insurance increases, just the cost of insurance, and we've consistently underfunded that in previous years. We've got to get that a handle on that. That's an increase of almost $4.4 million. New human capital, 2.2, close to $2.3 million for 30 plus new positions. Economic development incentives, which is awesome to have a bunch of businesses come to Durham County and locate here. It takes incentives to attract some of the best businesses. We're now at about $3.3 million annual budgeting to pay out economic incentives to companies, but it's an increase from this year to next year of close to $1 million. And then our vehicle replacement schedule, we're finally getting back onto our normal pace, and the cost of that has increased $855,000. So $32 million in new revenue, doing a happy dance. I look and I see 6 major initiatives, and there are a lot more requests that departments made, but 6 major initiatives takes all my available dollars. That's the framework we work in every year. Next slide, please. Property tax, natural growth. It's been an amazing year. Continue to build apartments, cranes, businesses out in the RTP. It's been a fantastic year. Total property tax revenue increase without a tax rate is almost $16 million. 13.9 million of that goes to the general fund. Remember, we talked about the capital financing plan. It also has an allotted amount of property tax, and it gets 1.9, almost $2 million. The collection rate is doing exceptionally well. This is just an indicator of the performance of our tax administration office, and it really is important. We're collecting 99.5% of what we bill. That's important from efficiency. It brings more revenue in the coffer. Our tax base valuation, this is where all the numbers come from. This is the property being built or fixed up or improved, has increased $2 billion in this, is what we're estimating it's going to increase this upcoming fiscal year. That's about a 4%, a little 4.4% increase. That is massive compared to historical growth. In our what we call good years, and it's been a good couple of decades for Durham County, to be honest, but in the previous good years, it was 2.5% growth. We've seen 4.5% growth. All of this growth is amazing in revenue sources, but it's my nature to be worried because this type of amazing growth can only mean one thing. At some point, it will be less than amazing, and we need to be prepared for that. Next slide, please. Property tax rate. This just shows you the split of the property tax rate. The total county property tax rate is 72.22 cents per $100 valuation. Just take a $200,000 house, divide that number by 100, 2,000 times 72 cents, 0.22 cents will get your how much you're going to pay in a property tax bill, or at least for the county. The property tax rate is split across the general fund and the capital financing plan fund. We're estimated to bring in almost $350 million in property tax revenue for 2022-23. Next slide, please. That's no increase on the property tax rate for either side. You've heard multiple commissioners and Claudia and the manager. There isn't a tax rate increase. There's probably going to have to happen in the 23-24 budget, not this coming year, but the next year, assuming a Geo Bond referendum passes, but none this year. Just so you know, 1 cent of additional property tax would create an estimated $4.8 million in revenue. And we had a tax rate increase last year of 1 cent, I believe, and we're looking flat. I think if we can go to the next slide, I can jump ahead and also say there's no tax rate increase for any other fire districts. We have special districts out in RTP, but largely our fire districts. Again, property valuation has been doing pretty good across the state, particularly well out in the RTP. So they've been able to have revenue increases for their districts without a tax rate increase needed for the citizens who live in that district. Sales tax, the big one for our economy, has just boomed for the last 2 years. And we could have a whole dissertation and could spend a whole hour trying to figure out why. I think it was largely due to people pin up, spending money more locally, not spending it on some things that are hard to tax, and a lot of stimulus dollars going in pockets and then turning around and buying consumer goods. With that said, the total increase in sales tax, the delta number that matters, is 11.5 million. So we're estimating to collect $106 million between all of the sales tax that we get. 2 of those sales tax amounts goes to pay for capital debt service. The rest of it stays in the general fund to support DPS and any number of other things. So it's a almost $11.5 million increase, total of $106 million. Give you a frame of reference, $106 million in sales tax is equivalent to about 22 cents on the property tax rate. This money we collect this way means you don't have to collect it from property tax owners in a different way. It also means visitors, people who come to DPAC and any number of malls and come to Durham County, they support by purchasing things. They support sales tax revenue by purchasing things here. General fund gets almost $7 million of that revenue. That's part of that $32 million total revenue source increase that I wanted to note earlier. Can we go to the next slide, please? These are the other increases, and we went through this. Medicaid hold harmless increases $5 million to $9 million. That's a jump from $4 million to $9 million. That's a huge revenue increase. We're not going to get free $5 million increases in revenue like that every year, but we got it this year, but we spent it really quickly as well. Register of Deeds revenue, $2.7 million for a total of almost $10 million. Patient fees are going to increase for EMS up to they're going to increase $3.27 million. That's largely because we're going from 157% charge to a 200% charge. That's to help offset increasing cost in that department, but it also gets us in line with our local neighbors, Wake County, Orange County. I think we compare it against Guilford County as well. Dr. Swell. And then investment revenue is a minor amount. It's increasing $500,000. That number became minuscule when interest rates were low. I'm already longing for those long gone days. But as interest rates rise, it's a double-edged sword. It's going to make the cost of building things more expensive, but we also earn a little bit more money with money in the bank. Next slide, please. So the total budget of all funds is around 794, almost $800 million. Maybe we'll all still be board members or employees when we see the total county budget hit the magical $1 billion number. I don't know. We'll see, but it's an increase of 8% on the all funds budget. But the key one where most of the activity that happens in Durham County is in the general fund. And that general fund total budget is increasing 9%, 8.97% to $550 million. Next slide, please. DPS funding. DPS funding is recommended to increase the current expense, $9.88 million. The request for current capital funding stays flat and recommended at $6 million. So that's total funding for DPS of $176 million or $9.88 million increase. That's a almost 6% increase in your budget. But I think as Dr. Sowell noted earlier, that's a 9% increase in the per pupil funding from $3,000 some odd dollars. It's a $360 increase to $4,333 per pupil. There are other things that we fund that we feel directly support DPS. It's just not funded through DPS. And those are SRO officers in the schools, public health, the number of programs we support with public health, as well as the growing number of school health nurses, nonprofits. I think it's a reading program. I forget the exact naming of it, but that's 50,000. And then we talk about the debt service. So the debt service is the annual payments we make on all the buildings that we owe and long-term debt we have to pay off. Of that $60 to $70 million total debt service we pay annually, DPS for 22-23 is more than half of that. It's $34 million to pay for previous Geo Bond restrooms or lobs or all of the debt that we're carrying on that. And then there's the total pre-K support we're giving, not just to Whitted School, but to private entities, and that it's about $6.4 million. So we like to say there's $48.3 million in additional funding Durham County gives to support directly or indirectly DPS related issues. Next slide, please. This is just a historical allotment of pupils. This is a number we look at. This is the ADM number. It's two numbers. I see Ms. Byron twitching your eyebrow. So I got this is Durham Public School students related to COVID. And it's going to take a while to recover. Just a history of ADMs, the way we look at it. Next slide, please. And this number, just wanted to show you, you mind if I?
The folks online can't hear you. That's the only challenge when you get in front of that screen. So yeah, you could, you
Thank you.
can.
I can point, all this slide shows you is the orange line is the DPS request for funding over a number of years. The blue line is the approved budget. Is that correct, David, if I'm reading it? And then the columns show you the delta amount increase that year.
Commissioner Burns, if she can set that up right there.
These columns show you the delta amount. So in 21-22, you had an increase in your budget from 2021 to 21-22 of $13 million. Part of that was an increase to current expense. Part of it was an increase in current capital from 3.7 to $6 million. What I'd like for you to see, what we would like for you to see is if you look at the first 4 years, we were doing $3, $4, $5, $6 million increases. But the last 4 years, that number has increased significantly, that delta number, the increase to schools every year. So for the last 3 years, that's a $30 million. I think that's it. That's the last slide. Oh, there are a few more. Okay, sorry. Then we've got Durham Tech Community College. We'll go through those real quick. That's total funding for Durham Tech is almost $10 million. It's an 8.8% increase in their budget, but a lot of that increase, $300 and almost $80,000 of their total $700,000 increase is related to student scholarships, Durham County Citizen Student Scholarship increases. Part of our Articles 46 sales tax, the board has dedicated the growth in that number to go to DTC related student scholarships. Next slide, please. Pre-K expansion is $880,000. That was what was requested. We're doing a slow and deliberate rollout of increase to pre-K as our board eventually wants to get to universal pre-K support. Total funding for pre-K now is around $6.4 million, and hopefully that will continue to grow in the future. We've continued our school nurse expansion. We're adding an additional 3 FTEs. We could have added more were requested, but we're struggling to find the school nurses that were added last year. It was 10 or 11 total new positions last year. We're struggling to fill those. So we're creating 3 more, but we're still trying to hire who we can get. So no need to tie up new positions with dollars that can't be hired. All that being said, the total number of school nurses we have now is 32. And we think another 12 are needed to eventually get to universal support for every school in Durham County. Next slide, please. The manager has gotten something that's very close to her heart and hopes, and we're looking at a vehicle that'll bring county services, a bunch of different county services to county citizens with a vehicle we're going to call DECO on the go. That's significant cost. I will point out that that cost is going to be supported with ARPA dollars. That's not hitting our general fund property tax revenue. We're going to use ARPA dollars for that. We feel it's a transformative change in how we can bring local government to citizens in the county. Again, I told you there are no special tax district increases, no fire district property tax increases. Capital improvement plan, we're looking to approve the CIP here soon. And the major issue is we have a proposed bond referendum in November of 22, $550 million, an estimated 2.5-cent tax rate increase. When I say estimated, I need y'all to hear me say that. If the economy tanks and my sales tax revenue don't grow as fast as I think, or property tax doesn't grow, that 2.5 cents could change. I don't think it will. I'm just saying, I'm looking out 2, 3, 4, 5 years out in the future. Let's hope it continues the good times roll, but you never know. Just that's why we say estimate. Next slide, please. All right. This is the budget work sessions that the county is going to have. We start on May the 17th. We'll give a general overview of the budget, just like we did for you all. May the 19th will largely be where we start talking with departments and having detailed review of the budgets. May 23rd is the public hearing that will be at the regular board work session. Then we have other work sessions, budget work sessions scheduled for the June the 2nd, the 6th, and the 8th if needed. We have planned budget adoption by June the 13th. And then we will have a 22-23 approved budget at that point. I think this is the last slide. No, more slide.
No, that's it.
Any questions?
No, there's one more after that. Yeah. The Geo Bond, which I think is really important for us to review.
The calendar for the Geo Bond. Do you want me to walk through it, or do y'all just want to read it?
I would love for you to walk through it.
Okay, Claudia.
That was truly just supplemental information. The main points, the main points are the next few weeks, the board has to move forward with lots of procedural steps. We coordinate with the local government commission, our bond council. We have had public hearings. Right now, there's a poll going on. So as the education awareness campaign will begin at some point soon. And so a lot will happen in the next few weeks and months. But the time frame for the adoption of it officially will be June, worst case scenario, but some action may happen in the May meeting as well. Again, we'll not go through all of those nuanced steps, but it's just those procedures that we have to do. The main one being the certifications that happen, and that would happen either in the May meeting or the early June meeting. We want to make sure we get the poll information back to see what the citizens are considering if we were to do that. That's underway right now. We should, we'll give that update to the board at one of their upcoming meetings as well, and we'll share that information.
This is coming from a couple of calls that I've gotten from citizens, just informing the community that any vote around this bond will happen in a public space, not behind closed doors. And I don't know where that conversation came from, but I got a couple of calls that said that we were taking a vote and there was no meeting scheduled. So just to
Yeah,
correct
it's
that conversation.
procedurally, the local government commission has very detailed guidelines as to timing and notifications. Because anytime that you are about to have a referendum of this nature, there are steps that are involved with that. So yes, ma'am, it will be public. It has to be by, or the LGC will not approve it. So there are lots of controls in space to make sure that we follow that. And we've been working with our bond counsel to make sure that we are in compliance.
Thank you all for this presentation. I know there's going to be a lot of comments. I'm going to start off and then I'll pass it to Dr. Mabinga and then we'll go along. One, I just want to say on that bond timeline, I know we don't have another joint meeting until August. And so if we do need to call one before then, so we can figure out how we plan together, I just want to make sure you all know we're open to that. So we make sure that we are ready to go once you all are able to get through the procedural pieces that are necessary and get the polling back and start working. So we're, as a board, will be ready to meet in June or July if we need to make sure we're ready to work together on the bond.
So July, we don't meet in July. We have one board meeting in July. And after that, we are pretty much at conferences or whatever. So if we don't meet in June, it will be August before this board meets again.
We're happy to meet in June. We need to make sure that we're working together to get this done. I just think August feels like it might be late looking at the timeline that you laid out. And so I want us to just be ready to go if we need to meet earlier.
Sure, the main work that will happen soon will be the education committee, which will be a group of private or non-elected officials or staff that will do the awareness campaign. And so we will coordinate with the manager and the superintendent, the steps as we firm up the steps to share with both governing bodies. That group, once it's identified, will be very busy because they will have to help in informing the community of that. Timeline wise, we're okay. We're actually a little bit ahead of where we were in 2016. So we feel comfortable about that from that perspective. But the next step will be the Education Awareness Committee, so that we will have both chairs to work, both you and Commissioner Howerton to help on that.
Thank you all. One more clarifying question, just so the public also knows, you have the series of budget work sessions that are coming up, and DPS will be coming to one of those as well to give more information. So that's another place where the public can come and share their concerns.
Absolutely. And the public and for the Board of Education, the Durham County recommended budget is up on the Durham County website. You can look under the budget department and you will see a link to a 300-page plus PDF of the entire budget. So do take a look and enjoy.
So this is not our only time to comment on the budget. So just want to make sure we all know that. I'm gonna start with Dr. Mabinga and then we'll go around to other folks.
I thank you, Madam Chair Armstead. Just want to welcome our county manager here to DPS. First time welcome, Dr. Sowell. Thank you to all county commissioners here and our Board of Education. Before I react to the recommendation of our manager budget, I would like to go back a little bit to make a few comments just to thank our commissioners when it comes to helping us to build those 3 schools. I remember our push to get to that point. Chair our ten and I went to Northern High School one day just to visit the facility. So I'm really grateful that we got to this point that we're gonna build those 3 schools. And thank you to our community, especially the northern community. They were very supportive to us as well, to our county commissioners, to make sure that this project come to fruition. So there have been really great political will to get us where we are today. And kudos to Dr. Monk with all our staff to be able to move those 3 projects in the same time, so which was not possible in the past. Thank you to our board for funding those positions to make sure that we have manpower to move our project. So my budget that's I brought to our board as well to our county commissioners was a very realistic budget. As we all know about inflation and we know the cost of living in RTP area, I was very reserved not even to include additional funding for our classified employees, which it did not really turn out to be good, as some of them may be watching. My approach was very realistic. Let's go with certified employees this time. Then next year, once we do our salary study, we'll bring the other folks along, because I was looking our history, how county commission have been funding us. They've been very gracious to us to keep on increasing based on how we're presenting our needs. But today, my reaction to the budget, thank you, Keith, for being really thorough, sharing with us about the revenues and all that. But I'll say this, we can absorb a one-to-one initiative with our state, our federal funding with SR fund. We can do that, knowing that after 2024, we can have this conversation with our county partners. We can also absorb the Lion Farms with our existing funding to make sure that we're going to be able to open our schools successfully in the fall. But when it comes to the $4 million, that was our priority for our certified employees, I just wanted to plead with our commissioners and our manager as well. State legislatures, they did not do us right by funding other districts with $100 million, and DPS was excluded. We made that case really clear. We have about 298 teacher vacancies. So without that additional funding to be competitive, we're not going to be able to operate our schools successfully. That's my plea to our manager. That's my plea to our commissioners. An additional $2 million will help us to be able to address the increase that we really need to our teachers and our certified employees. We all know $15 for our classified employees to live in an RTP area is not realistic. But I was realistic with the numbers, knowing the revenue that the county may bring in. That was something that we're trying to push next year. We may come up with a good one-time bonus for our classified employees, but those are not sustainable. I cannot use SR fund to increase supplements. Those are recurring funds that are not sustainable. So my plea to you today, our county manager, as well as our commissioners, an additional $2 million. I know this can be done without increasing taxes. That will help us to be able to produce our flyers and to go other places to be able to recruit the 298 teachers that we're looking. We have a lot of needs. As we all know, the pandemic has caused a lot of gap in our students. Yes, our enrollments went down, but the needs, the fixed needs, the needs of closing those gaps still exist. So I'm pleading with you to look back to the budget and see if a good $2 million that will serve us really to be able to be aggressive and competitive with our partners, our community, our competition, to be able to hire those teachers that we want to bring in our district. So that's pretty much my reaction. I did not want to put anything in the social media or news media. I really wanted to have this conversation. This was just a good opportunity for us to have this conversation. Thank you, manager. Thank you, county commissioners.
Thank you, Superintendent. I'm looking for hands. I'm gonna go Commissioner Alum. And did you have something as well, Commissioner Jacobs?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Mbenga, and thank you, Keith and Claudia, for this amazing presentation. I have a couple of questions I've been saving till the end. I wanted to ask for like our budget staff, in this budget increase, I know you mentioned that it's $359 per pupil increase. Do we have a breakdown of what that comes out to in an increase for the teacher supplements?
As part of the per pupil, so DPS asked for $12.875 million, $12.88 million. We are funding 9.88. What we are not doing is dictating to them where that 9.8 million. 5.3 million of their request was supporting positions that are sort of indirectly supported by the county, state salary increases, health insurance increases, and things of that nature. Another $4 million request made by the Board of Education and Superintendent was for supplement increases. So that's $9.3 million. DPS could choose to use that $9.3 million and apply 4 million of it to supplements. But that means they had $12 million in requests. There's charter school funding, to which Dr. Mbenga pointed out, there are other needs, things that they can try to figure out how to pay for on their own. But when it comes to salary increases, I guess the short answer is it's not built into that $359 increase. Just know, and I think it's in them in some of the information we gave you, the DPS does a very helpful single slide showing their increase request. Just know that $4 million is what they requested for additional supplemental funding for teachers. Am I correct in that, Dr. Mbenga, that number?
That's correct. But I will also add this. I think this was not a regular practice when we're able to increase our bus drivers' pay, which we could easily close off schools. That was a front commitment. That's what we did. And now we're coming to you guys to be able to help us to be able to sustain that as well.
So a part of the $5.3 million they requested, as you said, Dr. Mbenga, I think DPS used some of their available fund balance, increased bus driver hourly rates to try to get positions filled, absolutely needed to be filled. And they're now coming back to the county to backfill the increase that they had to make this current year.
And just to add, in that 9.8 recommended, portion of that is going to go to charter schools.
Yes, ma'am.
So just want to make sure that is clear that a large portion of that will pass through. Sorry, Commissioner Lowe.
Yeah. And then going to two things kind of aligned with each other. You mentioned that there is going to still be a gap of the remaining 12 nurse positions. Do we have an idea of, or like an analysis of what timeline we'll be able to reach to close that gap? Like in how many years do we think the county will be able to close?
I don't have a direct timeline. It's largely predicated on how much money in any given year. Remember, we talk about natural growth and revenue. I don't think we're going to have $32 million in 23, 24 new revenue, but we could have a certain amount, and the manager will have to decide amongst 100 other requests for positions, how many to allot to DPS. In theory, we could finish all 12 if that's what the board wants to support and manager recommends. We may do it over 2 or 3 years. Again, part of it will be, can we hire the ones that we have now? What's the vacancy rate we're carrying with school health nurses? A lot of positions are going to have to be rethought as it comes to compensation and keeping those positions filled. And those positions, particularly through COVID, have been high stress and high turnover. So
And if I can just add one comment to that, part of the discussion we had about the school health nurses was, sure, we wanted to fund more, but because of the vacancy with the positions that were approved last year, we did not. However, if we were able to fill the 10 from last year, the 3 that are in this recommended budget, and there is still a need, we did commit to looking for ways to fund mid-year requests for school health nurses in this budget.
Thank you, Manager. If I can react to that, the one that we funded last year was about $1.1 million. The money did not come to us, it was with public health. Just wondering, what are we using the money for? Is that sitting with public health or is with the county? Because it's not coming to DPS.
There were a number of things that have been done with significant lapse salary that the county has experienced through vacancies this year. And part of it were the same sorts of things that you all did. One-time bonuses, we're doing referral bonuses. We did some vacation buyback, and we did some 350 hard to fill positions, had salary increases of 5+%. I don't know the exact number. So a significant amount of our vacant dollars, to which you just said that million, is going to pay for either contract positions to try to get support in different departments and or pay for sort of compensation changes we've had to make on the fly, not unlike how you've dealt with bus drivers.
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure that the money is not coming to DPS.
And I have one last question for the school board or Dr. Maminga and anyone. Just looking at the graph that Keith had shared that showed during COVID, we saw a 2K drop in students during COVID, and there was a 280 increase in charter schools during that period. Do we know where those remaining students went, like where that gap of students is?
I think we're still looking for those students. We know that there are some students that are homeschooling. Homeschooling population is growing, not only in Durham, but across the state as well. So our task here pretty much to go after, especially those homeschooling, as now that we're transitioning a little bit after this pandemic. So homeschooling can be a possibility. Also, maybe some private schools as well.
Commissioner Jacobs.
Well, I just want to, going back to the bond before I forget, the formation of the Friends of the Bond Group, I think is really, really important. And I just would, I hope that everyone will be thinking about people that they know who might be well suited for that. That's the group that's really going to do a lot of work, and that we're going to be placing a lot of responsibility on. So if you all, I would just say for all of us, if you have suggestions maybe to share with each of our, chairs, and that's time sensitive. So I just wanted to put that out there. We had great, I think last year it was Farad Ali and Michael Goodman who did it 4 years ago, and they worked really, really hard. But we need similar champions and people who, and then of course, then there's a lot of people who are on the committee also as well. And we want the bond to be successful. So I just wanted to throw that out there for everyone to be thinking about that. And Dr. Mbenga, I appreciate your comment about, the wages. I just think that we're in a really difficult time right now in our community. Again, I feel fortunate right now. It seems like our local journalism is really focusing on doing some really good reporting on these key issues. But when we look at, again, the unsustainability of wages, there's a great metric that just came out now. You've probably seen it, where you can put in about what is a sustainable wage for people in our community. And we know we're not there, not for Durham County employees, not for city employees, not for DPS employees. What is it now? Our teacher wages are now, 34th in the country. Starting salaries, 34,000 or something for teachers in the state. It's just, it's abhorrent. And I think that the problem is that we can't solve all of these problems at the local level. Durham Public Schools employees, the state needs to step up. They're sitting on billions of dollars of rainy day funds. And I think that we together, both of our boards need to really be speaking out on this issue and educating our community when it comes to our statewide elections and where the source of this issue is. Because like the affordable housing crisis, we are not going to be able to pay our way out of this at the local level. And yes, people, all of the school staff and all of our county employees deserve to be paid higher wages than they're getting. There's no doubt about it. I think the problem is, how are we going to fund it? And we just cannot tax people enough at the local level to do it, and it's not fair. And again, the state needs to be doing what they're supposed to do. I know I told Giovanni the other day, I remember it was the town hall on CRT, and you spoke so eloquently about this issue in that town hall. So I hope that we will, policy wise, we really need to be speaking up about how, the state is just reneging. On a personal level, I have my youngest son wants to become a teacher. And he said to me the other day, I don't know if I can do it because it's just not fair the way what teachers are paid in North Carolina. And it's just so sad for me to hear my child say that.
We go to Mr. Sears and Ms. Byer.
Yeah, thank you, County, and welcome, Manager Sowell. Nice to meet you. So just a couple of thoughts that I don't think we talk about that often. I know the county knows this very well, but we don't talk a lot about the resident survey, the annual resident survey here. But what we find year after year there is public safety and education are the top two priorities. So I wanted to say just two things. One, thank you for the continued investment. We can and will always argue about how much that investment should be. I understand that, but there are also other models of education out there. Commissioner Jacobs, to your point, they're usually laced with inequities like urban Chicago and suburban Chicago, but those are not state-funded educational structures. Those have a lot of local funding. And so something I do keep in mind as we do this work is with a city and county resident survey that is always prioritizing Durham Public Schools, the what if of local taxing authority for our board. I'm not asking for it, but there are places where it exists. And I do wonder if this were a ballot item and not in a Geo Bond, but just a ballot item, would, in a progressive county like ours, would the voters accept more taxes for better schools? We can have better schools. They just cost what we can't afford. And certainly not what the state gives us to do it on. So I just want to raise that as an acknowledgement that we're going to have this tension. I am appreciative of the support, and we know our citizens want better schools, and we can't do it without funding. Finally, I want to point out that we're on the right trajectory. I think there are always questions about how efficient, how well your board is and your administration is doing with the funding they're given. Pre-pandemic, we went down to 1F school. Our A and B schools were on the rise. This administration, led by Dr. Mbenga, is heading in the right direction. I think this board has a lot of appreciation for that work and a lot of support for this administration. We certainly hope you do too. I think in my 8 years on this board, collaboration is improving. And I'm thankful for these quarterly meetings where we can talk about this.
Thank you all. And thank you and welcome, Dr. Sowell. And your budget staff is amazing. And it's great to come in and have such incredible detailed staff. And they work strongly with our staff. And we're very appreciative of ongoing strong support. I will say that a value that I think the majority of this board shares is moving and having conversations on our folks that are just at 15 an hour. That was something we celebrated last year. And I'd like us to get you all some data on how many people that is within our schools and how many vacancies we have in that realm. I was unable to be here at our work session last week, and our board, I think, would have had a healthy discussion and an additional ask of 4 million to get those folks up to 16 to 17, whether it's a multi-year plan between our two bodies. We know it's not y'all's responsibility, but we also know the state is not coming through and is allowing charter schools to grow unchecked in this community. We have 15 now in Durham, and you know, these students go to charters all over the place. That's not going to change anytime soon, nor do I have great hope for Leandro magically fulfilling its obligation to these students. So you're living the pressure that I know you saw in Guilford, that we're seeing in Wake and Chapel Hill. I mean, Wake has a multi-year plan that they're working towards to take it off incrementally. Let's have those conversations both for y'all's employees that are at 15 an hour. Let's get them up to 16, 17 over a multi-year phased approach. I would love us to have that vision and just keep taking care of our employees that are going to continue to struggle. That's where we want to focus our efforts. I appreciate Dr. Mavinga talking about the 2 million, because the counties around are not snoozing on their salary supplement. We're all just out competing each other to get and hold the best people. And we've never seen vacancies and retention issues like this. Our teacher retention is probably going to exceed 20% this year, 1 in 5. We're having to train and retrain people. We're having to bring in more lateral entry. It's not ever where we've been in Durham in a long, long time. It's just, and it's bad for children, particularly coming out of the pandemic. So I don't know what conversations you all are having as you look at your $15 an hour folks. I don't know if the folks that y'all put at 15 an hour ahead of us have actually moved on up and aren't there anymore. I want us to kind of continue to work together, because I believe and know that that is a shared vision to take care of our entry level folks, right? And make them able to live in this community where housing has gotten out of control. As long, you know, so I think we've got a month to kind of figure out some Durham solutions and to gauge that, but I think it's going to be super important. Yeah.
Commissioner Burns?
Thank you, Dr. Mubinga, for your leadership. Thank you for always reaching out to everybody on our board. I wish other people in this room patterned that leadership. They don't. Folks say we have to continue to work together. Some of y'all need to start, because that hasn't happened. I'm gonna go back up to the top. It's gonna seem like we're all over the place, but I did want to respect both chairs and not ask a bunch of questions. So one of the things that folks rock up, Fred, I'm gonna go back to you about the renewable energy plan and about that request that came to us with no line items, right? Everything y'all send us had a line item, everything every department sent. I don't have the expectation that our residents should know about line items, but what I do expect is when information comes to you all and then it comes to us, and I ask, well, what is $40 million for, right? That request did come, like, let's call it what it is, a thing, but that was the request that came. It was a $40 million, and no, I didn't know what it was for. I asked 3 times what it was for. I asked some of y'all what it was for. It would be different if you all told me it was going to be for fleet management, if we were going to put money towards 4 solar projects, you know, every 2 years, if we were going to reinvest in regeneration technology. You all might think to yourself, how does she know all this right now? Because my board put together a plan for renewable energy over the next, it was 48 pages. I read every bit of it. Y'all tell Tobin I read it. And we talked to our board about, well, what kind of investments are we going to be making? Those same types of investments are spread out throughout that plan. And so I just feel like when the community came to you all and then they came to us, they were already upset and agitated. It is very hard to be in these positions and have a fiduciary responsibility over public dollars during a pandemic. And we're trying to stretch them as far as we can to make sure that we make people whole. And then we basically have a $40 million ask that has nothing attached to it. That doesn't make us horrible people. That just makes us inquisitive, especially since we know we've already done it. So I do hope in the future, when things do come to you all and we come back and we say, well, hey, do you all know what this is for? We don't want you all to go back and say, well, Commissioner Burns, because I saw the email, said she doesn't know what it's for. I honestly don't know what it's for, because it was 3 sentences that said, we just want a $40 million line item. That doesn't make me an ogre. It makes me inquisitive. And I hope that you all are inquisitive too, because the kids in the school are inquisitive. The other thing that we want to talk about, some folks said that we were being really gracious. I don't know if you all caught it, but a lot of the, one of the examples of how we're finding revenue to compensate some of our personnel, we're doing increased EMS fees. So that's not necessarily that we're taking money and taking care of our employees. We had to find fees in other places to help compensate our employees. So this is not Durham County setting up a slush fund just for our people. We had to be very tactical in places. And I can tell you right now, every department did. Again, it was 60-some million dollars in ask, and we only did 32. You all were not the only department. And like my staff has said time and time and time again, we want them timely. If we are all being honest here about this conversation, folks turned in their stuff pretty timely. And then last week we got something just kind of out of the blue, and I had to call people on the phone myself to find out what it was, because we would have been ambushed with it. And I had to call my board members, and they're not, because we knew nothing about it. I saved somebody saying, hey, you all are about to get hit with this over the head. Our kids didn't deserve that. We didn't deserve that. And we would have, if when we know about things, we can plan for things. Like that's what this whole thing is about. I want to state for the record, thank you, Commissioner Jacobs, for figuring out, it said 50,000 in nonprofits. That didn't even cover the $150,000 that we're doing for community schools, right? So there are these other nonprofits that we feel. In 2 public meetings, I've seen individuals who are sitting on this side state, well, why are we not doing the same level of percentage of investment as Wake County and Mecklenburg County? Let me tell you about the little bait and switch that our surrounding metropolitan counties do. So they can say that they invest 55%. You know why they say that? Because they're quantifying operational costs, they're quantifying debt service, so that's how they get that. Their number is actually on par with us. So with how we fund schools. So that's another reason why we illustrated, yeah, we're doing $60 million in debt service, 34 million of that is specifically just for schools. So if you didn't catch that, he said it on one slide, we got to another slide. So I want y'all to see that correlation. So it's not that, Durham Public Schools is doing 39% and Wake County and Mecklenburg is doing 55%. They're actually adding in additional charges in there. The last thing I'll say, I wanted to mention, you all say you all are getting to 20%, you might hit 20%. We are at 20% with us. We're actually ahead of that, and so are other departments. So it's not that we don't feel, I do think that our children are the most important investment. So I'm not trying to say, oh, we don't have 20% of people too, but we are there and past that. And as far as the nurses, you're right. The nurses were housed over there. We had human resource officers. If you all want to bring in 58 nurses, you got to bring in staff, HR folks. And so we had to hire folks to hire folks. I don't really think people got that. I need to hire people to hire 58 more people. I need a nursing supervisor to hire 58 nurses. I need to make sure that a nurse needs an office, a nurse needs supplies. So when we say these personnel items in a vacuum and not think about all the external things that my staff had to purchase, the infrastructure investments that they had to make in order to support those, I think we kind of sort of mislead the public. So I wanted to add context to this conversation. And I want to continue that conversation with folks as we go on. I appreciate a lot of what you said. I really seriously did. I'm board member Sears. I appreciate a lot of what everybody said, but we are failing this community by not talking. There are some people who are sitting in this room, they have not talked ever in 2 years. That makes absolutely no sense at all. So if it is really about the kids, if it is really about the teachers, then when this door closes today, this conversation doesn't stop here. I've said that 3 meetings in a row now, 4 meetings in a row now. I've extended my olive branch. My folks have too. We will continue to say, to these parents that show up at our board meeting, because people showed up last night upset about a classified cost. To be quite honest, I will say this publicly, I did not totally understand. When you all came to us about the $17 an hour, I talked to you, Chair, and I talked to you, Vice Chair, and in my head, I really thought it was for bus drivers. I can admit my ignorance there. I did not know it's for instruction on everybody else, because that's one slide on the PowerPoint had it that way. And then last week when I asked, I went back to the slide, which I cannot find on the website today. And I showed you all that this is how it was explained to us. I went back and I listened to the sentence. So it's not that I don't want to give 4 million. I didn't understand that was what the ask was 2 months ago when I heard it. And I talked to some of my board members, they felt the same way. So I'm just hearkening back to that communication piece. That is not the bully. I heard your plea, Dr. Mabenga, and I hope that we can work on something. I have so much respect for you. I know how much you've done, but I see what is being written about in the community. And I think my vice chair was a lot nicer than I was. She says there's a lot of excellent journalism. There's a lot of bad journalism going on. And when these requests come up, I just want you all to know, and I'm not going to bring it up here because this has been a very civil conversation. When you all bring up these comments about dollars and cents, and I have parents talking to me, not about dollars and cents, but about treatment and about literacy, it is a tug of war within my spirit as an elected official to say, what am I funding when these babies have parents that are advocating to me about real learning loss? Not just learning loss through COVID, learning loss over a number of years. I want you all to keep that in context when you all come to us, because parents come to us too. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
I'm going to say a couple of things and then I got a jet. I'm 15 minutes late for another meeting because we were supposed to end at 11 o'clock. And everybody knows how punctual I am about ending meetings starting on time and ending on time. So just a couple of things, and thanks all for all the comments, and thank you, Chair, for managing this meeting. You know, I really think the staff has done an excellent budget. That we've got an excellent budget right now. And we know that no matter what we do, no matter what this board does, it's never enough. I've been on this board for 14 years, and no matter what we do, it's never enough because the needs are always great. The needs are always greater than the budget will allow. And I mean, everybody wants to be funded sufficiently so that every employee earns a good wage. And especially right now, when you're talking about a 2.5 cents increase that's coming if this bond passes, and if we're talking about another tax increase on top of that, some people can talk about, yeah, it's great to raise tax. It's okay. But some of us, it is hard as Hades to try to go to the grocery store because we're taking it from one hand, giving it in one hand, taking it out in the other one. So yeah, we can do, I mean, if we were to go up more, then we're going to take it back in taxes. So we have to really look at what are we doing, how are we managing it? How are we managing tax dollars and how we're taking care of people? Because there's a lot to be done. And Sears said something a few minutes ago about the state and how giving taxing authorities to the school board. I've had that conversation with folks in Raleigh. Their answer is absolutely not. So it's not a conversation that we're not having. They're just not having it. So until something changes from that arena, it's not going to happen, because we would love for you to have taxing authority. We'd love to give it to you. So let's see, was this something else? And it would be great to have a plan, a multi-year plan. And Ms. Beyer mentioned that how we're going to go forward with, because the DPS funding, we cannot continue to do and fund the way we're doing. This process is unsustainable in the way we're doing it. So there's got to be another plan that we've got to come up with. We've got to work on how do we continue to do this, because it's just not sustainable. Retention is happening everywhere. It's happening in county government. It's happening all over across the country. With our teachers, with just every place. There's a hiring sign in every window. So this is not something that is unfamiliar to whether it's the schools or whether it's county government or just in corporate America. And as I listened to President Biden on yesterday, we are sitting on a possible recession. And whether we like it or not, we are going to have to depend on our finance people as they caution us how we go forward. You know, we'd like to spend like we did, I think like a lot of us did when we got those checks that came in, was it $300 and $600? You know, we spend that and that made our sales tax increase. But we're not gonna get those again. That's over. So Keith is gonna have to tell us what we're gonna do next year when we don't get those checks and we don't have as much sales tax coming in. So just those few comments, and I'm going to have to run because I'm going to be late. I am late, but we've had a pretty good working relationship for the last year and a half with the board, with DPS board. I would like to see that continue and improve, because like last night when a young lady spoke to us and she said that she had been trying to get in touch with us. There has been no email to us. She was really upset that none of the board members had spoken to her. Well, we have not received anything. And then we found out that she said her emails have been popping back. Anytime any citizen wants to get in touch with us, they can always send that email to the clerk. And she will ensure that it gets to the commissioners, because there's not a commissioner on this board that will not address a citizen. If we don't have the answer, we'll give it to staff. So whoever that thinks that we won't talk to them, I'm telling you, that's not true. So thank you so much. I'm going to have to run.
Thank you, Chair Howerton. And I'm going to do some closing remarks and wrap us up because we are over time. Thank you all for this budget presentation and for the conversation. I hear the tussle that you all are all holding as commissioners. We all have a responsibility to take care of the people here in Durham. And we are fighting for our educators and the children. And I know you all are fighting for the citizens of Durham. So we all are wrestling with that tussle. I think the question we hear often is, how do we move children academically? How do we help close some of the opportunity gaps? And the way to do that is to have really strong educators, is to have an amazing teacher in that classroom. And we know the longer that a person teaches, the greater they are at being able to move children. And we know that I use the word educators because I'm including our child nutrition workers who need to make sure our kids are fed every day, and the bus drivers who are essential to make sure the kids get to school every day, and the custodial staff who make sure the space is clean every day for our children to learn and thrive. That's how we move children academically. And we want to make sure that we're fighting to keep and retain some of the amazing folks that we have. And we know we all can't do it alone. We all that's illuminated all of that. We can't do it alone. So we have to take this fight to the state level. I want us to consider, what does it mean for our boards to be working with the school board, to be working with other school boards who've been left out of some of that state funding, county commissioners, how you all can work with the other county commissioner boards so we can take this fight to the state. Leandro should have been funded, 20 years ago. There's an opportunity now. We have $6 billion the state has in their rainy day fund. We need to be pushing to make sure we can move that forward. I do want to also think that multi-year plan of how, I'm worried about where public education goes. We need a multi-year plan to figure out how we keep it strong for Durham and our community. That's what residents have asked for. That's what our community has asked for. And it's also what our children deserve here in Durham. So let's figure out how we can create that multi-year plan. I think I also want to be clear that some asks come from us, formerly DPS. So our ask around the bond has come, but the community also has asks that they make of you all. And so that comes. So I just want to be clear. We send our formal ask over through our staff, but I know community has been advocating for a sustainability bond and community advocated for increased wages. So that is the work that we're doing together and figuring out how we advocate for what we need. Our kids can't wait. And I know that that means we got a lot of hard conversations to keep having. And I hope you hear this advocacy as fighting for the students in Durham, which I know y'all care deeply about as well. Like we're figuring out how we do it together. And that's got to be how we move forward. We have a great relationship. I think the money that we received last year was amazing. The bonds that we've and the lobs that we've been able to fund some of the building of the schools has been amazing. Let's continue to figure out how we do this together. All right. Thank you all. I'm going to close the meeting at this time.